WTF moment. After I calmly said I'd sleep in another room, my husband screamed at me and hurt himself over a misunderstanding. Throwaway account, as expected. My husband, 31 years old, male, and I, 32 years old, female, have been married for 3 years. Recently, we have been under a significant amount of stress, and often, when I seek assistance or make a lighthearted comment, he responds that I am merely increasing the stress he experiences, leading to situations where I think I am being reasonable, but he reacts dramatically. We have just begun marriage counseling as a result. Currently, our primary concern is our ill cat, who requires medication 3 times a day. My husband typically administers her pills, although I have been learning how to do it myself. The last medication of the day is due at 1 a.m. My husband tends to stay up late while I go to bed early, so he usually plays video games until 1 and then gives her the medication in his room. We each have our own rooms, but we sleep in mine. After he finishes administering the pill to our cat, he comes to bed with me. Fast forward to the incident last night. The building scheduled a power outage from 11 p.m. to 11 a.m., and the cat needed her medication at 1 a.m. My husband expressed his dislike for the idea of giving her the pill in the dark, but acknowledged that it was necessary. Ultimately, they cut the electricity at midnight, and I told him, I am going to sleep now. It's already late for me, and I really need some rest. I said this because I had gone to bed late the previous night after reviewing and editing an assignment my husband needed to submit for his master's program. We went to bed in my room, and he informed me, I am setting the alarm for the medication. It will go off in 40 minutes, so it might wake you up. I replied, that's fine. If I wake up, I will just go back to sleep. I fell asleep, but minutes later, I heard the alarm and felt my husband moving. I attempted to drift back to sleep but struggled because I noticed he was giving our cat her medication in my room, which is something that never occurs. Throughout this, he did not acknowledge me at all. I brushed it off, but a few moments later, I felt and saw a flash of light aimed directly at my face. I assumed he had already administered the medication, so I was confused. Wanting to sleep and feeling drowsy, I sat on the bed and told him, I am going to sleep in the other room. I wasn't rude or loud. I simply conveyed my intentions. That's when everything went awry. My foot barely touched the floor when I heard my husband yelling at me. It jolted me awake completely. I was bewildered by his reaction. He shouted and began to cry, saying, that is the one thing I did not want from you complaints. You are complaining constantly, and I can't handle this much stress. You are putting too much pressure on me. I tried to reach out to him, saying, but I only mentioned that I was. But he interrupted me. He continued to cry and yell, refusing to listen, and even started laughing. I expected you to wake up and assist me, but you didn't, did you? I attempted to explain that he never asked for help, and I would have assisted him had he done so after the alarm, but he hadn't, and I thought he was finished with the medication. I couldn't do it. How can you not understand that? And she bit me, and it hurt so badly. He then showed me his finger, where the cat had bitten him. I tried to calm him down and urged him to breathe so we could talk, administer the medication, and go back to sleep, but then he began to pull and tug at his hair. I became extremely worried and told him to stop. I tried to grab him by the shoulders, and he pressed his hands hard against his head. He even started kicking the base of my bed in a way that suggested he wanted to hurt himself. I was terrified he would inflict further harm and pleaded with him to stop and breathe. Some time ago, he had hurt himself during an argument by banging his head against a wall. I have never done anything like that to myself, and after that incident, he promised he would never harm himself again. Yet there he was, in distress. He had also promised that he would not scream at me again, yet here he was, disregarding that promise. I kept telling him to breathe and assured him it was just a misunderstanding, but he replied, I never wanted or expected you to assist me. I just did not want to hear you complaining about this. He kept repeating that, while nothing I said seemed to penetrate his frustration. He stood up, and I feared he might find something else to hurt himself with, but fortunately, he only reached for a tissue. I encouraged him to sit on the floor and breathe. He sat down, and I took his hands, saying, inhale, X, but he cut me off, pulling his hands away and exclaiming, this is where the cat bit me. I already told you that. He moved back to the bed, occasionally slamming his hands against his legs. I could not grasp how gently touching him hurt, but he seemed fine with hitting the injured hand against his leg. At that point, he took his cell phone. I suspect he started recording the conversation, set it down, stopped yelling, but continued to cry, repeating the earlier complaints. This time, I remained silent. I did not move or attempt to argue, I merely hoped he would not harm himself further. A few minutes later, he added, "You told me you would wake up to help me," and I tried to clarify, saying, "I said I would wake up with the alarm, but then I would go back to sleep." He did not hear me. At times he asserted he never expected my assistance, and at other times claimed that he did. He was contradicting himself. At 1:50, he finally moved. He brought the cat to me, and I offered to give her the pill if he held her steady. I also suggested that I would retrieve a churu treat. Our cat only rejected the pill once, and the second time, it was successful, even without the churu. I still gave it to her because my husband complained that the other portion would go to waste since we could not refrigerate it. Afterwards, we finally went to sleep. I wished him good night and told him I loved him. He reciprocated. It took me quite some time to fall asleep. At one point, I went to find our cat, and when I returned to bed, he draped a blanket over me. I was at a loss for words. This morning, he began by treating me like a stranger. There was neither affection nor anger in his tone, but that quickly changed. When we were about to give the cat her medication, I mentioned I would attempt to administer the pill without a churu treat, since she did not finish it, and we still had no electricity to store it. Our cat rejected the pill 4 times, and he became frustrated, refusing to allow me to try again. He attempted to do it on his own, but that did not succeed either. At one point he exclaimed, "Oh God," in an angered tone, prompting me to ask, "What happened?" He did not respond. I pressed, "What happened?" And he mockingly replied that the cat had scratched him. When he tried again, I asked if I should fetch a churu, to which he said, "You claimed we had no more left. What are you doing there? At least bring me some napkins." When it appeared our cat had swallowed the pill, he went to wash his hands while I kept an eye on her to prevent her from spitting it out again. I was standing beside her when he returned from the bathroom. It seemed he wanted to approach her, and I asked, "Do you want me to move, or?" He responded, "Well, yes, you are just standing there doing nothing." I explained what I was doing and asked him to please stop. Before he left for work, I told him we needed to discuss his behavior, as he had been treating me poorly. He replied, "I have not treated you poorly, and even if I had, it is not my concern." "That is what you said, right? That you hadn't spoken to me disrespectfully." "But I did not. I merely stated that I would sleep in another room." "It was your tone." "I swear I did not use a negative tone. It was merely a statement. I neither raised my voice nor shouted or insulted you." "I did not raise my voice either." "You were yelling at me yesterday." "No, I was not." "Even if that is true, I do not care about your feelings, just as you did not care about mine when I told you that you used a terrible tone and kept making excuses." "They were not excuses. I was merely explaining that I had just awakened, did not know what was happening, and simply wanted to sleep." "If that is your perspective, I am leaving." That is what occurred. He does not want to converse, has ignored me, and insists that I used an awful tone, which I did not, while he denies having screamed. I do not know how to approach him anymore. I feel like I am losing my mind. He refuses to listen, has treated me poorly, and even denied his own outbursts. I would appreciate any guidance on how to engage with him or whether I should also adjust my own approach. Thank you so much in advance. Summary: my husband erupted after I mentioned that I would sleep in a different room. He claims I used a terrible tone, subsequently screamed, harmed himself, and mistreated me as a result. Story 2. OMG. I thought I was finally free, but I discover my boyfriend is still using my past against me. Trust shattered, can we ever heal? Trigger warning: self-harm. As the title indicates, I, 21 female, am frequently subjected to derogatory names and hurtful remarks, including terms like hoe, whore, slut, calling me disgusting, a cheater, and so forth. Let me provide some context as to why this is occurring. Prior to our relationship, while we were talking and figuring out our feelings, I was communicating with someone I once considered a friend, whom I no longer view in that light. I sent intimate photos to this individual, but this was not a new behavior for me. I entered into a relationship with my boyfriend in April of 2024, while I had been exchanging explicit images with this person since 2021. Why did I do that? It stemmed from a desire for attention. Being overweight, I struggled to believe anyone could genuinely find my body appealing. Eventually, it became evident that he was primarily interested in me for those images, and I would at times ignore him when he requested them. This pattern continued until 2024, and here is where I anticipate receiving criticism. In February, I was reluctant to send intimate photos to this individual specifically, but I justified sending them to my current boyfriend as well, convincing myself that it was acceptable since I hadn't taken the photos for him directly. At the time, I was aware that my boyfriend was using Tinder and conversing with another girl about the singer Joji, and I was encouraging him to pursue her, as I doubted he would ever be interested in me due to my past actions in early 2023, where I was intensely craving attention and sent explicit photos to numerous guys. I recognize that this raises legitimate red flags. Nonetheless, I would engage in that behavior and subsequently feel like the most revolting person alive. I regret my decisions and have promised myself to refrain from repeating them. All it leads to is further distress for me, a fleeting sense of satisfaction, followed by feelings of despair. Before we entered into a committed relationship, he requested that I block several people, but I was reluctant to comply. This included my best friend, who is still in my life but whom I was forbidden to communicate with. Much later, he revealed to me that he was trying to shield me from individuals from 2023 who had ridiculed my appearance. I learned this from someone within a group chat. They are all from Chile, while I am from the United States, who initially mocked me but later apologized after getting to know me. I was completely oblivious to their taunts because I do not speak Spanish, so they used it to discuss me without my understanding. However, my boyfriend believes that. Let's refer to him as N, and the person I sent explicit images to as J. Anyway, he is convinced that N harbors feelings for me, which is why he interacted with me in a friendly manner later on. Yet, I know I am not Entik's type. Plus, he often shared with me all about a girl from his school whom he had a significant crush on, seeking my advice on what her comments could mean, as I would likely understand it better being a girl. Why do I mention N? I was instructed to block him before we became a couple. If I'm honest, I really didn't want to do that. I finally felt as though I had found a real friend and was not eager to lose that connection. Apparently, my boyfriend had a history with N where he would playfully kick him from calls and servers but would let him back in. I understand that could be irritating. Shortly after the beginning of our relationship, my boyfriend found out that I had unblocked another person, whom we will call V. He is just a kid, and I never sent anything to him. Nevertheless, he stated that the only way he would stay with me was if I deleted my account and provided him with access to it. I was the one who offered to do that, so I complied, deleted my accounts, and shared my credentials. However, I created a new account to maintain communication with my friends. I did not think it fair to lose my connections without a valid reason. Yet, he did not discover this until 6 months into our relationship when I received a message from N on that account. I was asleep when I took the screenshot, so I had no immediate awareness. He demanded I grant him access to that account, and I was fine with it, as I wanted him to understand that I was not unfaithful. Since the beginning, he had called me a cheater. I hoped this would demonstrate my loyalty, but it did not have the intended effect. While I acknowledge I was wrong for hiding that account, at the time, I thought my intentions were noble. That turned out not to be true. This all culminated in him calling me names, renaming my account, disgusting person, and making posts on my stories claiming, proof that I am a cheater. The emotional toll led me to engage in self-harm as a form of coping. I didn't share this with him, but he eventually found out when it was inadvertently captured in a frame. A week later, following the incident with the offensive account, I was discussing how I sometimes revisit conversations with my ex, where he used to call me derogatory names. I know this damages my self-esteem, but I'd internalized those beliefs about myself. This resulted in my decision to provide him access to my Discord account, which I hesitated to delete, as it had been my original account since 2017. Eventually, he stumbled upon the conversation with Jay. He saw the explicit images I had sent and was further hurt by the fact that on his birthday, I had sent explicit photos to Jay. After that, I ceased communication with Jay, but my boyfriend does not accept this fact. He maintains that I cheated on him, and even now, he continues to make disparaging remarks such as, "Oh, you will probably go out with Jay and sleep with him." Or, "Oh, your beloved N, whom you can't seem to let go of, I know you love him." If I go out with my family, like a trip to Cedar Point, he insinuates I will cheat on him with some random guy. Initially, I resorted to self-harm, but I stopped when I frightened myself by cutting too deeply. Now I have a prominent scar on my thigh that I suspect may never fade. At present, I have not acted on those urges and have insisted that he provide me with a list of rules I must follow, documented in a Google document. These rules, if broken, could lead to a breakup and jeopardize his trust. He specifically stated that if I self-harm again, it would result in an immediate end to our relationship. A couple of months later, I learned that the girl he had asked for permission to speak to at the beginning of our relationship was actually his ex. He confided that he was uncertain about his feelings for her and that he wanted both relationships but felt conflicted. He even cried because he was aware of the impossibility of that situation. This revelation hurt me deeply because, although I sent explicit images to Jay, it was before we began officially dating, not during our relationship. He explained that he did not reveal that a longtime friend was an ex because he was worried I would react poorly. I felt utterly betrayed. I remember trembling with anxiety at the news and crying for days. I ultimately requested that he delete the accounts through which she could reach him, but he initially resisted. In retaliation for his refusal, I deleted my accounts on Instagram and TikTok where I communicated with him and shared content. It took a month of my pleading via WhatsApp before he finally deleted his Instagram, yet he did not remove his TikTok. Fortunately, he eventually got banned for making offensive remarks, which resolved that issue. Now you understand the entire situation. My question is, it has been 8 months since all of this transpired, and the accusations of cheating, verbal abuse, and name-calling have not ceased. I might seem misguided for wanting to stay in this relationship, but I refuse to end it. I recognize that this situation has hurt him as well. I genuinely seek advice on how to support him and regain his trust. Outside of this turmoil, he is kind-hearted. He dedicates time to comfort me, listens to my rants, reassures me of my beauty, and urges me to strive for my goals, especially during moments when I struggle to find motivation. I am doing my utmost, but I worry that he does not feel secure with me. I seek suggestions on how to mend the damage and heal, as I have attempted gentle discussions, but they consistently fail. Summary: despite my efforts to convince my boyfriend that I am not unfaithful, nothing seems to work, and I frequently experience emotional breakdowns because of it. I am looking for ways to help him heal, as he means everything to me. Story 3. Mom casually reminded me I don't pay rent, making me wonder if my efforts to help mean anything. Why did her words hurt so much? I am using a throwaway account for this, since I have never posted anything before, and I prefer to remain vague about certain aspects so that no one I know can recognize me. To provide some background, I am a 25-year-old female currently residing in my parents' home after recently completing my bachelor's degree. I am in the process of applying for jobs and awaiting responses from graduate schools. Although I do not have a reliable income at the moment, my parents are not charging me rent, allowing me access to their utilities, providing my meals, and occasionally driving me to the necessary locations. I do not have a vehicle or insurance. I do possess a driver's license, but I am uncomfortable driving and would need some refresher courses even if I had a car. In light of this situation, I have been making an effort to be helpful around the house. There are 6 individuals living in the home, including 3 younger siblings, and as the eldest, I find there is a lot of cleaning to typically manage. I genuinely do not mind this, and I enjoy assisting with household chores. I routinely handle the dishes, vacuum, tidy up downstairs, and do laundry proactively when I notice these tasks need attention. Additionally, I take care of the younger children whenever requested. I frequently inquire about how I can assist around the house, fully conscious that I do not pay rent and feel limited in my contributions. Many of these chores have been self-imposed, for lack of a better term, since my mind is somewhat exhausted, and typically, I am not explicitly asked by anyone to do them, other than babysitting, because I aim to be useful during this period when I am not engaged in other activities. Due to the number of occupants in the house, and the fact that my family relocated immediately after I started college, which resulted in my old room no longer being available and my siblings claiming the new rooms while I was away. There was simply no space for me to return to when I came back home. Currently, I am living in what is essentially a closet located in the garage that was originally intended as a music room for storing instruments and jam sessions. My family is very arts-oriented. Imagine Harry Potter, but just big enough for a small, plastic, folding picnic table that I am utilizing as a desk. It includes a light, though there are no windows, and is adequately heated or cooled for living purposes. I have an inflatable mattress with a topper and my computer inside. It is not too troublesome for someone like me, who prefers solitude, and notably, it is free. My only grievance is that it is extremely cramped. My desk chair is constantly pressed against my inflatable mattress, forcing me to squeeze in and out to use my desktop. And to access it, one must walk through the garage, which can be quite unpleasant if I shower and try to walk back barefoot. All of my personal belongings and clothes are stored in the garage. I hope none of this comes across as me being ungrateful. I am certainly thankful to have a roof over my head, especially since I cannot afford one otherwise. All three younger siblings are currently in school, aged 18, 16, and 8, and have various drop-off and pick-up times, as well as extracurricular activities. My mother is mainly a stay-at-home parent, but she frequently assists my father at work lately. Consequently, there are periods when I find myself at home for several consecutive days. Options for walking are limited. I do take them when possible to escape the house. However, I feel that this is often frowned upon by my parents since I do not have a house key and cannot secure the door when leaving, so I try not to do it frequently. While it is not a significant issue, I never voice my concerns about it. I enjoy being at home, and it brings me joy to go out with them when they do take me along. To clarify how often I watch the younger children, the only ones that truly require supervision are the 8-year-old and the 16-year-old, primarily the 8-year-old. Before starting college, it was my responsibility to look after them frequently, especially when the 8-year-old was very young, around 1-2 years old, and both of my parents were busy working. Now that the 18-year-old is mature enough, she had taken on the role of overseeing her younger siblings when necessary during my absence, and since my return, we have been alternating responsibilities. However, she is very engaged in her extracurricular activities and is preparing for college herself, so recently, the responsibility has predominantly fallen on me. Again, I do not have any objection to this. The 16-year-old has sports practices, scrimmages, and games most days of the week, as well as on weekends during the season, after school. She is not frequently expected to supervise the 8-year-old and does not contribute to keeping things tidy even when she is home while I am watching both kids. She tends to exhibit very challenging behavior, which is typical teenage angst, when asked to help with these tasks, which might explain why she is not often requested. While this isn't a major concern for me and is not particularly relevant to the main issue, I do worry about it since I know that the 18-year-old and I will not always be available to assist. I care for the children for an average of 2 5-hours each day, approximately every other day during the week, so my parents and younger siblings have time to run errands, work, or participate in their extracurricular activities. Sometimes, I watch them even longer on weekends when my parents need to leave for other duties or to enjoy some personal time. This leads to what happened this morning after waking up. I walked into the house to use the downstairs bathroom. When I exited, my parents and the 18-year-old were on their way out. I inquired if everyone was leaving for the day to know whether I would have the house to myself to clean afterward, or if Mom and/or Dad would be returning, in which case they might need my assistance with something else, or we may go somewhere together. And, understandably, I was interested in everyone's plans. They informed me that they were leaving for the day until it was time to pick the children up from school later. Since I hadn't left the house properly since the previous week, I responded, "Okay, I might go out too then," to keep them informed. As my mother was grabbing her purse, she said, "Well, vacuum before you do. There's stuff on the floor, see?" I glanced down at the floor and nodded. Still, being somewhat groggy, I failed to give a verbal reply, which I acknowledge was my oversight. I don't mind vacuuming at all and never have, particularly since I was specifically requested to do so this time. Evidently, she didn't see my nod or perhaps didn't register it due to her rushing around to leave and drop the 18-year-old off. But as she exited, with a distinctly annoyed tone, she remarked, "I mean, you don't pay rent or anything, so, before they all left. I am unsure why, but that comment affected me, and I might just be overly sensitive because I completely understand they are under no obligation to house, feed, or assist me at my age. However, the remark really hurt my feelings for some reason. After I completed the cleaning, which included vacuuming as asked, I retreated back to my room and laid on my mattress to cry for a moment. I cannot pinpoint why it upset me so much. I am not bothered by being requested to vacuum at all and would have willingly done so, and I acknowledge that what she said was entirely factual. I'm just confused as to why she would say that to me unless it was not intended to be hurtful, which I sincerely hope is the case, since I consider myself to be accommodating and not the type of person to be uncooperative when asked to help. Therefore, it felt like an unprovoked critique, leaving me emotionally bewildered. Perhaps the manner in which she expressed it affected me, compounded by my attempts to be a valuable contributor around the house, since I cannot provide financial support for my living situation, yet I was still met with that reaction. It significantly altered my mood since this morning. I feel quite sad and am reluctant to leave my room at all. I anticipate that I will be fine by the time everyone returns, but while I am lying here, I am beginning to think I might be overreacting. I do not want to burden my family with this emotional weight or potentially cause any discord, and my mother is not the type of parent I would feel comfortable addressing this with directly. I suppose I am seeking outside perspectives on whether I am overreacting. Story 4. I sold a water heater, got ripped off for $400, but exposed a scammer and flipped the tables. He ended up paying me $15,000. Word of note, this is not my story, but I am sharing it on behalf of a friend who currently lives abroad. It is a lengthy tale, but certainly worth your attention. Some time ago, my friend was selling various items online, including a water heater, the type commonly found in community halls or church kitchens. It was in good working order, so he listed it online for $150. Shortly after, he received an email from a landscaping business owner offering $100 cash for it that same day. My friend agreed. 2 weeks later, he received an email claiming the water heater was malfunctioning. Odd. In response, my friend offered a full refund or to cover the repair costs as long as they were under $100. Instead, the buyer submitted an invoice for $400, stating that repairs had been completed and threatening to send a debt collector if my friend did not pay within 48 hours. Out of fear, he paid the invoice and sent the payment confirmation. The landscaping firm owner then replied, "This is the cost of selling second-hand electronics," followed by a message wishing him a great day, which ended with a smiley face. A month later, while at a bar, my friend overheard a woman discussing how her boss, who owns a landscaping company, had conned someone selling a water heater. Intrigued, he approached her table, and she shared the story. Her boss had bought a broken water heater from a thrift store for $25, purchased a functioning one for $100, and then charged the seller for the repair of the broken one, eventually reselling it to a community organization for $300. My friend asked, "Who was responsible so I can avoid hiring him for my yard?" After she revealed the company's name, he realized it matched the email address of the person he had sold the water heater to. He was, in fact, the person they were discussing. He mentioned feeling quite upset about the situation, but then COVID-19 hit, leaving him with other pressing concerns. 18 months later, while browsing the site where he sold the water heater, he spotted several landscaping items like shovels, gardening equipment, wheelbarrows, nighttime lights, drills, nail guns, construction materials, and a generator. According to regulations in his area, if one is selling a generator, it should include a warrant of fitness to demonstrate its functionality and safety, free of hazards such as exposed wires. Most people overlook this requirement, and he recognized that the generator was being sold by the landscaping company. Just by its appearance, he believed there was no chance it had a warrant of fitness. Word of note, a business that fails to provide a warrant of fitness upon request for a generator after 2 weeks can face significant penalties, including hefty fines, and being compelled to refund the affected party along with any incurred costs. They formulated a plan. He discussed it with his flatmate, who agreed to finance half of the generator's cost and to handle the payment. My friend had never met the landscaping firm owner in person during their previous transaction. The pickup was confirmed via security camera footage. But when they arrived, it became apparent that the owner, an irritable older man who enjoyed reprimanding his workers, had emptied his storage space. The owner insisted on an, as is, no refund policy, and after the flatmate displayed the payment confirmation, they agreed to take the generator for $800 without any warrant of fitness documentation presented. Next, they brought it to an electrician friend who assessed it and prepared an invoice for repairs, stating that it would be less expensive to purchase a new generator, and frankly admitted that this one should not have been sold and was unsafe. They also discovered that the main identification number had been scratched off, although a secondary number, which is often recorded for tracking on warrants of fitness, remained intact. They reached out to the seller to inform him of the repair costs, which amounted to around $5,000. The owner quickly informed them he would not pay, reiterating, as is, no refund. They then asked him if he possessed the warrant of fitness for the generator. After 2 days of silence, they sent another follow-up email requesting it again. Still, there was no reply. Eventually, they inquired once more and received an email in which the seller offered to take back the generator for $800. They refused, insisting on the warrant of fitness, but received no answer. They sent him daily emails for 2 weeks, with no response. Consequently, they printed the original listing that had been archived on the website and reported him to both the site and governmental authorities. 4 months later, my friend found himself in court, where the seller approached him. The seller insisted he would take back the generator for $800 and pressured my friend and his flatmate to inform the judge that they had been refunded and wished to have the case dropped, claiming that this was the final word on the matter. My friend declined. Inside the courtroom, proceedings went swiftly. The inspector sent by the government to evaluate the generator determined that it was in poor condition, should not have been sold, and was highly dangerous. The inspector also revealed that the seller had attempted to obtain a warrant of fitness in early 2021, but was advised to repair or scrap the generator and was informed it was not to be sold. They established this through the secondary identification number, which had not been scratched off during the original warrant of fitness attempt. The judge ordered the landscaping firm owner to refund the flatmate $800, pay $5,000 for the generator repairs, and a $10,000 fine, directly payable to my friend's flatmate as the affected party. Upon exiting the courtroom, the owner was furious, insisting that he was not paying any further sums and questioning what he had done to deserve such treatment. In response, my friend remarked, "Do you remember the water heater?" The owner looked baffled. "Do you recall the water heater you purchased for $100? Because I do, as I sold it to you. I also know you got another one repaired and charged me for it." The owner's jaw dropped, and to emphasize his point, my friend stated, "It's quite ironic, isn't it, when what goes around comes around, particularly when it accrues interest. You now have 48 hours to pay or a debt collector will be contacted. Remember, this is sometimes the cost of selling second-hand electronics. Wishing you a lovely day. Do not allow this to deter you." And then they departed. He settled the $15,000 amount 2 days afterward. My friend and his flatmate divided the $10,000 fine equally as agreed, which they used for rent and educational expenses. They had the generator repaired and obtained a warrant of fitness for it before selling it for $1,000 with a newly replaced identification number. Finally, they treated themselves to a delightful dinner and a night out on the town. In summary, the landscaping firm owner cheated my friend out of $400, and in return, my friend incurred $15,000 in expenses for him.